Thank you, Ms. Hirasi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. First of all, I would like to thank UNESCO and the City of Hangzhou, the Chinese government, for inviting the United Nations Environment Program to be in this meeting, plus the links between culture and environment. The topic I'm going to give you today is a little bit different from the one that was signed, since I thought that both culture and environment are the interlinked ingredients for sustainable development. So my title today is Enhancing Nature and Cultural Synergies for Sustainable Development. I also have a subtitle in Chinese to the benefit of our country fellows. So I'll talk. My talk will start from a kind of macro analysis of the culture in the post-Rio +20 era, and also to go into a bit detailed analysis of culture-nature nexus, and also what UNEP is doing on the synergies of nature and culture, which will be covering three subtopics: ecosystem services, climate change, and green economy. And also I will try to give some sort of conclusions and also some remarks to trigger further discussion on this topic. Thank you very much. So actually, in Rio +20, there are a lot of issues that were discussed. The main issue was the integration of economy, society, and environment. And we see that 2012 is a starting point of the integration, because 1972 in the Stockholm Environment Conference, there was a proposal, and also countries calling for balanced development of economy, society, and environment. And 40 years afterwards, we call for the integration of these three major components. And in the next 50, 100 years, in the post-2012 era, we will see more integration in that process. And this is kind of an overarching framework on how these three dimensions, social, economical, and environmental dimensions, work for sustainable development. And out of that, I would embrace the culture here as a key, or what I call a prerequisite for sustainable development. Of course, there are a lot of other components that support sustainable development: education, science and technology, green economy, ecosystem management, and so on and so forth. And actually, there was one person that people didn't see in Rio +20, but she was the driver of the whole process since 1962, when she published the famous book. I don't know how many of you know that, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, American nature writer. So that is, I will see, I wouldn't start from 1972 of the environmental movement, but I will start 10 years earlier, starting from 1962, when she sown the seed for the global environment movement that drives the whole process to where we are today, not only on the environment, but the whole spectrum of sustainable development. But in terms of recognition of culture, it is a rather late kind of recognition, because in 1972 there's none mentioned culture in the Stockholm Declaration. 1992 there was one paragraph mentioned culture and sustainable development, and last year, 2012, the Future We Want has this preciously two paragraphs, 41 and 58, mention the importance of culture in post-Rio Plus 20 era, and that acknowledges the natural and cultural diversity, and recognize that all cultures and civilizations can contribute to sustainable development. And my other colleague, Dr. Jian Liu, has drawn these very beautiful trees, and the linkages between the trees, basically to elaborate in a multifaceted manner man, nature, and culture interactions and linkages. I will not go into detail, but I'll leave this PowerPoint here for your further analysis. So basically, what it says is nature mothers culture. Right? The culture helps nature protection and conservation. And I will also give you some examples of those things, including going back to 5,000 years of Chinese history of the nature-culture dynamics. So you must have recognized this, which culture is this from. Basically, this is Greek culture and African culture and Egyptian culture. And you can see on your right-hand side, basically the animals, actually they were the characters of the words of the ancient Egyptians. And Arabic or Islamic and Maya. So they're all basically mothered by the nature, these ancient cultures. And if you look at this, we are here where this Liangzhu culture back to 5,000 years has been was created. And also you could see the Chinese characters, the sun, the moon, the cloud, the rain. It was kind of vivid description of the culture. Now it comes our words, our characters. So this is the origin of Chinese characters. Okay, we've been talking about not only the human history, but the geological history of the Earth. The Earth has a history of 4.6 billion years, and the Holocene was since 12,000 years. And now, since last year, or the year before, Sir Christian Cole and his colleagues from Oxford proposed Anthropocene. What does it mean? It means we're entering a geological era that is man-made, because we're changing a lot of earth processes, atmospherically, and also in terms of biodiversity, ecosystem change, landscape change. So that's why Sir Christian Cole said that we are entering an Anthropocene in terms of geological language. So, in the last 5 years, if you go back to the human history, basically man and nature were mostly in a balanced relationship. But last 250 years, since the Industrial Revolution, that's when the economic and environmental crisis started, and there were several, or dozens of them. And last 20 years, we've been experiencing two global economic crises, 1997 and 2008. We're still suffering in the shadow of the crisis. Global warming, biodiversity loss, ecosystem degradation, environment pollution, you name it. Most of the, if not all, including in China, the bad things happening in the last 20 years, since 1992. Now, since you're in China, I will also include some sort of case studies on China. As a lot of leaders mentioned yesterday, that China has a history of 5,000 years. And it was history of nature and culture, interdependency, that what happens. And the first, I would call the first environmental law of the world, was back to 4,000 years in the Xia dynasty of China. It says, in spring, no axes should be waved in mountains and forests, so as to let trees to grow. In summer, no nets should be spread in rivers and lakes, so as to let fishes and turtles grow. Sorry, I have to speak Chinese to embrace my Chinese colleagues. 语境就是这个春三月，山林不登府，已成树木之长；夏三月，川泽入王谷，已成鱼鳖之长。这是我们第一个世界上第一部这个环境的法律。And also back to 2,600 years, is Laozi and Zhuangzi. They continuously worked on the nature and mind relation, and they found out nature and mind are one. And this is a very important philosophy of Taoism in China. Actually, Laozi is the father of the Taoism. We also had a recent analysis of what happened in China last 60 years, and there's a book UNEP on the table of my right-hand side, which elaborates the three case stages since from 1949 to 1978, 1978 to 1998, and afterwards. So basically, also to elaborate the important events during the last 6 years, what happened to ecosystems. It's pretty much on policy, institutional setup, political influence on the ecosystem management in China, but also you must find that there's a culture behind it. Especially since last year, the Chinese government has applauded the development of ecological civilization, the same strategic importance as economic, political, cultural, I mentioned cultural, and social development for the country's well-being. And actually, it means that in China, both culture and environment, they enjoy the same status as political, economic, and social aspects to support sustainable development in this country. This emerging culture is an overlay on other civilizations and is associated with globalization and global environmental concerns. Hence, it is likely to have a profound exemplary impact on the rest of the world, especially when you consider China now is the second largest economy in the world and the largest developing economy in the world. What is ecological civilization? Mr. Huntington said that civilization is the highest cultural grouping of people. And the Greek root of ecological is oikos, meaning home or house. So ecological civilization is a clear recognition of human dependence on and care of nature. So it is consistent with the ancient Chinese philosophy of man and nature are one. And it requires fundamental transformation of our current modern culture from consumerism to environmentalism. So what UNEP is doing on this nature culture synergies? I will mention these three things: ecosystem services, climate change, and green economy. In the future we want, ecosystems was identified 38 times. It was almost everywhere. And 23 paragraphs are specifically on ecosystems. So this is not a coincidence, because from 2005, when UNEP released the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Report, it elaborated ecosystem services into 4 categories: provisioning, regulating, and supporting, and most importantly here, cultural services. So perhaps, as far as I know, UNEP is the first UN agency to recognize the value of culture in terms of environmental sustainability. It says in the report, cultural perceptions and practices affect biodiversity, and human culture is strongly influenced by ecosystems. And it also says the importance of cultural services and values of ecosystems is not currently recognized. So it means we have something more to do to promote these movies. And 2011, the UNEP WCMC in Cambridge released UK Ecosystem Assessment Report, which also includes a very strong component on cultural services of ecosystems. And also in the Convention for Biodiversity, in RT targets, I think it was 2010, they set the target also for culture. In terms of climate change, culture is recognized to help promote low carbon development, increases preparedness for climate impacts and risks of disasters, raise science-based awareness, and support UN system carbon neutral initiative. And also, I would also mention the science and policy interaction here in this dynamic. You see, basically the first, perhaps you know the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it releases reports periodically since 1991, and 1992 it was the UNFCCC Convention. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence, because politicians and policymakers, they recognize the science. And 1995, the second assessment report, and 1997, the Kyoto Protocol, and 2007, the fourth assessment report, and the same year, the Bali roadmap. So there are quite a bit of synergies between science, culture, and nature. When it comes to green economy was mentioned 23 times in the future we want. And paragraph 58, recognizing and supporting the identity of indigenous people, their culture and their interests, and avoid endangering their cultural heritage. And this is the only one that relates to culture in a sectorial way. And also, I will just give a short definition of what is green economy by UNEP. Green economy is the one that results in improved human well-being and social equity, while significantly reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities. But culture promotes green economy through mindset and behavioral change, which will lead to sustainable production and consumption, especially when it comes to consumption. We're talking about low carbon economy. So consumption accounts for even a larger part, driving the whole process of carbon emission. So let me try to give some conclusions. Conclusion number 1, nature is the mother of culture. And conclusion number 2, nature and culture are interlinked pillars of sustainable development. And number 3, a culture that cares for environment is a prerequisite for sustainable development. And the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals need enhanced synergies of nature and culture. And UNEP supports the increasing role of culture to promote environmental sustainability. Thank you very much.